Okay. Welcome to the City Hall Council meeting, May 2nd, 2022. The city is conducting this public meeting using the hybrid model. The public is welcome to attend tonight's meeting in person at the Sumner City. Not again. Do we have it? Okay. Tonight's meeting is also being live streamed through YouTube. Access links and additional information can be located on the city's website and on the meeting agenda. Call to order the meeting of May 2nd, 2022 at 6:01. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And tonight we have Pastor Dion. There he is.
Let us pray. Loving and gracious God, we give you thanks for this new day in which you have made. Lord, we lift up tonight's meeting to you, asking for your wisdom and guidance, and a prayer, God, and blessing for our mayor, our city council, all of our city staff, all of our officers, and all of our community servants, God, who serve this beautiful city. We lift them up to your presence, asking for your blessing and safety over each and every one of us. And most especially, Lord, we pray for the residents of this beautiful city, asking for your safety, your provision, your care, and your guidance. And God, would you also raise our level of consciousness of the matters and issues of this city. Be with us, O God, in this time. In your many names we pray. Amen.
Thank you. All right. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Potato,
Here.
Brown,
Yeah.
Cole,
Here.
Hochstetter,
Here.
Newman,
Here.
Reed,
Here.
Stewart.
Here.
Okay. First off, we have a presentation by East Pierce Fire and Rescue, and I welcome Chief Parkinson.
Sorry, I'm going to attempt to share my screen here. All right. Well, thank you, Council, for inviting me tonight and letting me speak to you and give you an update of where East Pierce Fire and Rescue has been and where we're headed over the next couple of years. For those of you who I haven't met, my name is John Parkinson. I'm the Fire Chief of East Pierce Fire and Rescue. Was put into this position a year ago. So this is my first opportunity to come speak before you. And I mentioned that I came here a year ago, and so I just wanted to flash up a few different faces that have changed. So the screen that's in front of you has my command staff. So that's myself, Deputy Chief Bill Mack, who's next to me in that picture. So Bill replaced me. He came to us after 30 years with Valley Regional Fire Authority to the north of us. The next couple of people over, Kevin Stavenfeld, Jeff Moore, both assistant chiefs, both recently promoted. And I'm calling this out because during the pandemic, like many other organizations, we saw a huge amount of changeover, and in particular in our command staff. So those two folks are new into their positions in the last year and a half or so. Both Chuck and Russ on the top row have been in position for a while, but then on the bottom row of the battalion chiefs, 3 were existing and 2 of those are new as well. So command staff had about a 50% change out over the last couple of years. So a few new faces on the block. So a quick overview for all of you. I know you're all familiar with the name East Pierce Fire and Rescue, but who we are and how big we are and what we do and whatnot. Just want to briefly touch on that real quick. So as far as service area, beyond the city of Sumner, we cover the city of Milton, city of Edgewood, city of Bonnie Lake, town of South Prairie through contract, all the unincorporated areas east of Bonnie Lake. So that's everything around Lake Tapps, Prairie Ridge, Tahali, out past South Prairie, around Wilkeson, around Carbonado, past Fairfax, all the way out to the National Park entrance. So that's 153 square miles with 100,000 residents inside of it. As of today, we have 163 full-time employees. And then on top of that, we have 7 volunteers, 2 of those being chaplains and 5 of those being volunteer firefighters or volunteer EMTs. So pretty large staff size compared to where we were, even if you just rewound 10 or 20 years ago. As far as call volume, annually, that 163 personnel responds to, the uniform members responds to over 12,000 incidents per year. On average, we send around 2.5 units on every 911 call. So that means we have unit responses of around 25 to 30,000 responses per year of individual units. So a lot of rolling stock going down the road nonstop every day in and out. As far as governance, just like you, we have elected officials that are fire commissioners. So they serve 6-year terms. We have a 7-person board. And so that's who, just like you, determines, sets policy and adopts budgets for the district. And then much like Jason, I fill the role of administering the district on a day in, day out basis. As far as funding goes, we're primarily funded through property taxes. 85% of our revenue comes through property taxes. It's a split of our regular levy and the EMS levy. So of that 85%, 3/4 of that comes from the regular fire levy, and then 1/4 of that comes from the EMS levy. Outside of that big chunk of property tax revenue, the other substantial chunk, the remaining 15%, is primarily made up through EMS transport revenue. So when we transport somebody to the hospital, we receive revenue from either from the federal government in the form of Medicare, Medicaid funding, or from private insurance. We do not ever bill our own taxpayers. So where that revenue comes in is through those insurance payments. Anything that's not paid by insurance, we end up writing off for our taxpayers. For folks that are out of district that happen to be passing through or visiting, we will end up collecting the full bill from them. Predominantly who we transport are our own taxpayers though. So that's just a bit about us. So in front of you, for those that are in attendance, you have a copy of our 2021 annual report. And I'm just going to hit through a few topics on that. And this is also available online for those who aren't in attendance. And I left some copies with the mayor so that anybody not in attendance can take a look in the future. So first item on here is staffing improvements. So over the last 5 years, we've made a steady effort to increase staffing. Sometime back, our typical engine company staffing was 2-person staffing, which is substantially low. It puts both our employees as well as the public at a higher level of risk regarding what actions we can take in an emergency setting. So over the last 5 years, a concerted effort by the board to increase staffing. And as of July of 2021, we finally hit our mark of having all emergency units, engines, and ladder trucks staffed with 3 personnel, 24/7, 365. So that brings our minimum staffing day in and day out to a minimum of 27 now. When I arrived here, we were at 21. So I know that 6 doesn't seem like a big number, but that actually takes us about 35 people to get that additional 6 because it's across 3 shifts and we have to do additional hiring to offset for leave, whether it's scheduled or unscheduled. So, and then in the mix there's also retirements and separations for other reasons that we try to keep up with. So like I said, we're now at a minimum staffing level of 27. So each day on duty, there's 1 battalion chief who oversees the entire shift, 5 engine companies, 1 ladder truck, and then 4 medic units on besides those. Next item on there is budget adoption. So just a couple highlights for you. We run an annual budget, and that's typically adopted in November of each year. So in our November adoption, a couple things. One is we added a couple new positions, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. added some new state-of-the-art medical equipment, purchased a new boat, which will be out on lake taps this summer. And then kind of our highlight that I'm going to capture here is just that we were able to keep our expenses down pretty far. We came in at an overall operating expenditure increase of 0.72%. As far as revenue increase, that would be a 1.17% increase to across all of our taxpayers. So the net effect would be about $15 per year to the average homeowner. So just over $1 a month is what the tax increase that our taxpayers saw, which happened to also be your taxpayers. So next item on there is strategic plan, and that's one item that I handed out. So this was kind of one of my first things to bite into as soon as I was put into the position. So we kicked this off last spring. First time we've had a strategic plan in over a decade, but I wanted the organization to have a clear roadmap as far as where we were headed over the next 5 years. So the document that you have in front of you is what was adopted unanimously by the board in September. And I won't spend any time digging into it because it's good bedtime reading, but it has a lot of actionable items in there that we have already made a lot of headway on. Focuses on 4 key areas. Number one, our employees obviously is our greatest asset. We put them as our number one goal. Focusing on community growth and preparing for the future as we see new folks move into the area and our communities continue to grow. Focus on community relations. This has become even more important now coming out of COVID as we try to reconnect with our community that we kind of lost connection with, except for by social media over the last couple of years. And then the last one is focusing on organizational efficiency. So that's both internal function, external function, as well as our utilization of district resources and making sure that we're fiscally responsible. And then last item on that list of accomplishments for 2021 is just facilities and equipment. Specifically, this is bond projects. And so we don't have any new stations being built in Sumner just yet. But our first station that went into production up in Edgewood is about halfway through the process. And what you see on the screen is a rendition of that station. So that's station 118 in Edgewood. We have 3 other stations coming in behind that. Station 111, which is our headquarters station in Bonnie Lake. We expect to go out to bid sometime in May. And then the next 2 stations right behind that, station 114, which is on West Lake Taps, kind of the northwest corner of the lake. And then our new station, which will be going into Tahale. If anybody is not familiar with where Tahale is, that's south of Bonnie Lake, and it's supposed to have around 30,000 people in it when it's built out. But we'll be breaking ground on both those 2 stations, the one on Lake Taps and the one in Tahale in the fall. And then the last station, hopefully will go into production at some point in mid-2023. But it's exciting to see those underway. Unfortunately, COVID, supply chain, all the words that I'd rather never say again in my life keep getting in the way. Right now, our Edgewood station is stuck because we can't get steel to span the apparatus bay because of a war over in Ukraine. So different headaches that you thought you'd never have to deal with. As far as equipment, we did complete all of our projects as far as new vehicles. And so, as you know, in town here, you have a shiny new, very long ladder truck that you see going by from time to time. So we got that, and then we got 6 fire engines. So all told, that brings our fleet into extremely good shape. It had gotten pretty rough shape over the last 15 years or so and became increasingly unreliable. Specifically, the ladder truck that was assigned to Sumner spent more time out of service for mechanical issues than it did in service. So exciting to see new equipment. The firefighters are extremely grateful for that, and we thank our taxpayers for that. So last item that I'll hit on here is just where we're headed in the future, and then love to hear if there's any questions from council. So a couple items. I mentioned some new positions in the budget. So the first one there is a behavioral health specialist, and that person actually just onboarded in early April. So you may be familiar with the term community resource paramedic. That's a person and a program that we added into the department about 4 or 5 years ago. Currently, that's held by one of our firefighters, Jen Killian. What her focus is working with both low acuity incidents and high utilizers of the 911 system. Oftentimes, those go hand in hand with behavioral health calls, people who have some other underlying issues. But they end up potentially inundating the 911 system. So that's been Jen's focus over the last few years, is working with that. And so we've added another body, and this one's a civilian who's a behavioral health specialist. So that person will take on more of the case management in the background. That will allow Jen more time in the field and allow us to get some more focused efforts primarily into senior housing, which do produce are high call producers for us. So next one on there is says MSOs. So that's medical service officers. So I mentioned that we have a battalion chief that oversees each shift, and they supervise the 26 people that are on duty underneath them each day. This fall, we'll be adding another supervisor. So a medical services officer is responsible for the oversight of all medical incidents throughout the day. So roughly 75%-ish, depending on day to day and year to year, of our incidents are medical related. All of our personnel are trained to at least be EMTs, if not paramedics. So this person has a large amount of oversight to make sure that we're following protocols and following up on clinical issues, that training issues, et cetera. So that person will go into service 24/7, 365 this fall. So that will bring our minimum staffing level up to 28 each day. So I mentioned our bonds and our vehicles. So voters approved in 2018 an $80 million bond for those projects. $40 million was sold in 2019. So the second half of those bonds will go for sale this July. Originally, we were hoping to wait until this fall. However, to try to capture bond rates while they still happen to be low before they skyrocket too far up here, we're going to sell in July. The good news is we're still able to capture low rates, at least as of right now. And what that allows us to do is a couple things. When this was originally marketed to the public, it was assumed that it would come in at about 25 cents per thousand is what the average homeowner would be paying. So by selling right now with lower interest rates, we're able to do a couple things. One is capture that lower interest rate and pay less interest. We're also able to shorten up the term of the repayment schedule on the second half of bonds. First half was sold at 20 years. The second half will be at 16 years. So they'll both pay off at the same time. In doing so, we're going to come in at around 20 cents a thousand instead of 25 cents a thousand. The net effect of that across all taxpayers is about an $8.5 million reduction in taxes. So that's a good thing, and that'll get us the money to finish the rest of the projects that I listed out earlier. Safer grant is listed out on there. That's something that we have submitted a grant request to the federal government for. This is for staffing. It's actually targeted towards hiring personnel for that Tahali station that I talked about, just because the story that we're able to paint out there as far as funding and staffing needs for an isolated community. If awarded, this would be a $5.5-ish million 3-year grant that would hire 12 firefighters. It's 100% funded by federal. There's no match locally. At the end of that 3 years, we would have the choice of either continuing at that staffing level and in figuring out how to pay for it, hopefully through some offset of tax revenue that's grown over those 3 years, or we have the ability to just absorb those personnel through attrition. We see more than that typically retire out each year. So we'll find out this summer if we get that. It would be a good win for our taxpayers if we were awarded. If not, we'll just continue as is right now. As I mentioned earlier, we've got Station 118, which will be opening this fall, hopefully, if we stay on schedule here. Next April, we expect to be on the ballot again. If you recall, we ran 2 issues last fall, both in the primary and then one again on the general election. We had the EMS levy, which was approved in August. Our regular levy was out for a multi-year lid lift in both August and November. It failed to get the minimum vote requirement to pass. So in April of 2023, we'll be out in front of the voters again. This time it'll just be for a single year lid lift levy reset. And then, like I said, our next targets after that become opening Station 117, which is again that Tahali station, likely in the fall of 2023, where we would see that opening. And then Station 124, which is the Milton station, hopefully having staff into it at some point in 2024. So that's kind of the where we've been, what we've been doing, and where we're headed. I'll close on a couple things. One is, I know when you hear things like staffing Tahali and staffing Milton, that may not sound like it has a profound effect on the services provided in Sumner. I can promise you that it has a huge effect, because this is our busiest station between the ladder truck and the medic unit. And while they are busy in Sumner, they're also busy running outside of the city to go help out both in Edgewood, in Milton, up in Bonnie Lake, because those units are either on a call in Milton, in Edgewood, or in Bonnie Lake, or out in Holly or somewhere else. So as we add staffing across the system, it makes the entire system more reliable. So what we're after is that when you call 911, the closest station is the one that comes to your house, and that it's not coming from 2 or 3 cities over. So, and then last item is just, I want to thank you guys for inviting me. I've only worked for East Pierce now for 3.5 years, and all of our cities, we have great relationships, and most of my interaction are with both Jason and Brad on a day in, day out basis, but with city council on public safety committee and everything else, I've always appreciated the relationship that we have, and it's always nice to be able to pick up a phone and talk to somebody instead of getting yelled at on the other end. So I appreciate that. And again, thank you for having me, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Do we have any questions for Chief Parkinson? I see Barbara Botetto.
I was wondering, what is the call volume in Sumner compared to the other cities?
Oh, boy. Am I still on there?
Yes.
Well, that's a great question.
I know it's higher.
Yeah, so we
Just curious.
typically, our typical service, I apologize, I'm just pulling up a stat here. When we look where we're at right now, sorry, I'm looking at units here. And so, for instance, where we're at year to date in Sumner, if I could get the right page here. There we go. So Sumner right now is the single busiest first due area. And when I say first due area, I don't just mean city. I mean the area that is assigned to Station 113 in Sumner. So that will extend slightly beyond city limits. But that is, as of right now, and that's year to date, it's at the busiest point. Now that may normalize a bit as we move on through the year, but between here, Bonnie Lake, and then the combined areas of Edgewood and Milton, they're all pretty close as far as being high. They're all high call volume.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Newman.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about the behavioral health specialist. I mean, the one who's dealing with the high intake calls, but then also like the new person coming in. Where do they operate out of? And when they are dealing with those specific category cases, what resource, like how do they treat that? Like, do they work with other agencies and organizations to do that, or is that solely on the fire department? So
two-part answer for you. So number one, our folks, they basically are working Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. They alternate schedules, but those are typically the available hours. And they're dealing with folks in predominantly a non-emergency setting. So if you, when you think about this in the policing world, what we see is a person that's in crisis potentially when we're talking about mental health or behavioral health issues. So that's not where we're connecting with that person. We're hoping to connect with them when the issue hasn't gotten to that point. So that's kind of how we engage with them. And then the second part to your question was, are we doing that work? And we are really only doing the connection to those services throughout the county and the state that most people have difficulty trying to navigate and connect with. What we found that works really well is, number one, we have a high degree of trust with the fire department. And so when our folks walk in, and our folks at this point is Jen Killian, our community resource paramedic, the amount of trust that they have just because of the fire department name, they'll let us help them a lot more than they do when they just have a county resource show up that they don't know who it is. And so that usually gives us a foot in the door to start that connection, and then helping them with the case management of connecting them with all the different services that are out there and helping them navigate. So, and as I'm guessing you're aware that that's the part where all the work really takes place in trying to help somebody navigate and connect through and connect them up to the best resource.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Anybody else? There we go. Thank you so
All right,
much.
thank you for having me.
Okay, so that brings us up to Police Week and Peace Officer Memorial Day, and we have a proclamation. Wait. Well, we have one more thing from Chief Parkinson. It's okay.
I forgot that I had this. So on behalf of East Pierce Fire and Rescue, for Mayor Hayden, for the amount of time that she served on the board of East Pierce Fire and Rescue as an ex officio, we got you this award like a year ago, but because of COVID, we never got to give it to you. One more. All right, sorry about
Good thing I said yes. Okay, Chief. The other chief. Okay. So now we have a proclamation, Police Week and Peace Officer Memorial Day, whereas law enforcement officers play an essential role in ensuring our safety and in safeguarding our rights and freedoms. And whereas our officers partner with citizens to keep our community as safe as possible by enforcing traffic laws, proactive policing, and forming neighborhood watch groups. And whereas when an unsafe situation does arise, officers are first to respond and provide assistance, often at great risk to their own personal safety. And whereas Sumner police officers continue to face increased danger, both seen and unseen, and scrutiny in the performance of their official duties. And whereas our officers recognize their duty to serve our citizens by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against violence and disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against the oppression. And whereas in 2021, Sumner police officers responded to over 14,000 calls for service, arrested 177 suspects, and made 1,787 traffic stops, removed 23 impaired drivers from our roadways, and provided needed security and property protection. And whereas the Congress and President of the United States have established May 15th, 2022 as Peace Officers Memorial Day and the week in which it falls as National Police Week. Now, therefore, the city of Sumner proclaims May 15th, 2021 as Peace Officer Memorial Day and the week of May 15th through May 21st as Police Week in the city of Sumner, and urges all citizens to mark this occasion with appropriate ceremonies commemorating police officers past and present who by their faithful and loyal devotion have collectively preserved our rights with our security.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And one of the things I want to thank the council and the mayor for being so supportive of our police department and our community as well. It's been a tremendous amount of outpour and support through COVID and through all the different reforms and things that we've experienced over the last few years. And one of the culminations of Peace Officer Memorial is the Pierce County Police Chiefs. Finally, after taking a 2-year hiatus, we're back in person this Thursday, excuse me, May 5th, 6 o'clock at the Church for All Nations on 112th. And so I'd encourage any council member of the public wanting to come out and support the police to attend this. It's a very nice ceremony.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to consent agenda. Will the clerk please read the consent agenda?
Item number 1, approval of the minutes from the regular council meeting of April 18th, 2022, and the April 25th, 2022 study session. Item 2, approval of the checks and electronic payments in the amount of $3,786,210.49. Item number 3, resolution number 1624, council rules and procedures.
Thank you. Will Deputy Mayor please make a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
Yes, I move we adopt the consent agenda.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councilmember Botetto. It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Would any council member like to remove an item? Anybody want to remove an item? Seeing none? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Passes unanimously. We have no public hearing tonight. And we are moving on to unfinished business, which we have no unfinished business. All right, public comment. The public is encouraged to submit their comments to the city clerk by email before tonight's meeting, so the clerk may read those emails received into the record. Michelle, do we have any written emails?
No, Mayor, I did not.
All right. Does any public or listening watch it have any comments that they would like to make regarding items not on the agenda? You can, if you can, you can raise your hand feature, or you can push *9 on your telephone. Do we see any public? Nobody in the public. Okay. Moving on. New business. 2023-2024 Council Strategic Priorities. Deputy Mayor Hochstetter, would you like to make a motion?
I move we accept the 2023 to 2024 council strategic priorities.
That's a tough one. And do I have a second?
I second it.
Seconded by Councilmember Cole. And I call City Administrator, say that fast 3 times, Jason Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor. Bear with me for just a moment as I get my presentation going. All right, thank you. My name is Jason Wilson. I'm your city administrator. Before you tonight is the adoption of your 2023-24 strategic priorities. As you may recall, in March of this year, council met to discuss what your goals are ahead of the budget season. And strategic priorities really have been in place for a number of years. They were last significantly updated in 2006. Every year during the budget process, council has reviewed those, made some minor modifications, but this is actually the first significant change to our strategic priorities since then. I want to point out that strategic priorities really help staff focus on what is important, what council wants to see as we build the 2023-24 budget. They are not to-do lists, though. Really, they are helping guide what goes into the budget and helps, what does the city accomplish as the outcomes as a result of those strategic priorities. Many things that the city does do overlap different priorities, but all in all, they really help support the city in achieving its mission to provide needed and valued services that promote our sense of community while setting our vision in motion, which is setting the standard of excellence for a progressive small city. So at a study session a couple weeks ago, we discussed the draft strategic priorities, and we've summed them up into 5 different sections. And I'll go through each one of these sections. I'm not going to read each bullet point underneath them, but I'll hit a couple of highlights. So the first is community character. How we achieve this is through investment in parks and open space. It's also balancing the past with the future needs and desires of a changing community. And it's long-range planning that effectively manages growth. The next one is effective transportation. This includes the equitable distribution of infrastructure investments across all of our neighborhoods while preserving preservation of our existing assets, and also looking at regional solutions to mitigate cut-through traffic. Protection of natural resources includes protection and enhancement of rivers, streams, and fish habitat, providing clean and safe drinking water, and then environmentally conscious capital investments. Public safety includes responsive and proactive policing, progressive, collaborative, and systemic social service solutions, and traffic engineering, education, and enforcement. And then lastly, excellent government. This includes recruitment and retention of quality, diverse staff. With a focus on long-range financial stability, transparency in policy and actions, and being responsive and engaged with our community. I'm happy to answer any of council's questions regarding your strategic priorities. If adopted tonight, staff will incorporate this into our budget planning process and tie any sort of changes in service levels to your strategic priorities to support them.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments for Mr. Wilson? Councilmember Stewart. It's on. It was on.
Yeah, Jason, this is really well done. I fully support it. Thank you very much for doing such a good job encapsulating everything we talked about and just come up with a great product here. Thank you very much.
Any others? Councilmember Newman.
Yes, thank you. So Jason, I have a question, well, and I guess kind of for council too, and I feel bad that I didn't notice this earlier, but I am wondering if we are remiss in not having like housing affordability somewhere on there as well. Like as we think about our zoning and our planning and what we allow, what we don't allow, you know, and especially with senior housing being given, I feel like a primary goal and something that we've all been talking about recently. I guess, and sorry, so I hadn't thought about a way to amend it, but I would like to kind of, I think, have a conversation about whether that's worth considering.
So Councilmember Newman, I definitely hear your concern, and I can tell you where I think it's already encapsulated in this.
Okay.
Just get under community character, there's two items that affordability or housing affordability could fit into. And the first one is the bullet point number 2 on this screen, which is balance the past with the future needs and desires of a changing community. As you mentioned, we have a lot of change happening. We have a lot of people that are moving into our community. It's important that we make sure that we have housing for all of them. And then the last bullet point talks about long-range planning that effectively manages growth. And housing affordability is typically a long-range planning function to make sure that we adopt policies that not only say that we want affordable housing, but actually encourage and make it possible to have affordable and attainable housing.
Does that do it for you, Councilmember?
I mean, I think so, as long as that's everyone's understanding, and so that, like, you know, that, but that won't get tabled or put to the side because we weren't specific enough in here. As long as like that's staff's understanding and council's understanding that we're still working, that we want to work toward those things, then I'm okay with that.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Seeing none, Will the clerk please call the roll?
Reed,
Yes.
Hochstetter,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Cole,
Yes.
Potato,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Newman.
Yes.
Passes unanimous. Ordinance number 2819, amending Sumner Municipal Code 6.04 dog license fees. And we have Chief Maricki up at the dais.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council, guests, and staff. Before you tonight for consideration is ordinance number 2819, which if adopted would amend Sumner Municipal Code, section 604030, which establishes our pet license fees in the city of Sumner. Earlier this year,
Can
about
we
March.
stop for 1 minute?
Oh, sure. Need a motion. I'm sorry.
Can we call for a motion first? Councilmember Reed?
Now it's Councilmember Potato.
Councilmember Potato. Sorry about that.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance number 2819, amending Sumner Municipal Code 6.04 dog license fees.
Thank you.
Yes, and I'll second that.
And seconded by Councilmember or Deputy Mayor Hochstetter. Thank you. Sorry about that. Go ahead. I know it. No, I was so excited to hear it. I was out of the gate too.
So earlier this year in March, we sit with, in respect to our different license fees. And should be noted, the last time this council approved an increase in pet license fees was in November 2014. So our review showed that we were substantially lower in altered and unaltered dog license fees, and we were pretty much on par with unaltered dogs, both for a regular rate and a senior rate, and our cat license fees seem to be in line with our neighboring jurisdictions. So really, this ordinance would only, if adopted, increase dog license fees in the city of Sumner, $4 for a citizen and $2 for this equivalent license for a senior pet owner. And we would make this, if adopted, this ordinance would become effective June 1st, would give us opportunity to notice to the public, change our databases and pet point and whatnot. So I do ask that council would approve this ordinance as presented. If you have
Okay.
any questions, I'd be happy.
Do we have any questions for Chief? No questions? Do we have any question? Oh, Deputy Mayor Hochstetter.
Thank you for noticing my hand. Chief, how is it people pay their license? Do you send out anything in the mail to them, or do they just pay online and that's the only way?
C, all of the above. So they can come to City Hall. They can buy it at Metro. They can buy it online. And yes, we do send out reminders every year annually.
All right. Anybody else? Anybody from the public? All right. Seeing none. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Potato,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Hochstetter,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Cole.
Yes.
They're unanimous. All right, moving on to resolution number 1623, memorandum of understanding regarding opioid settlement funds. And we have City Attorney Andrea Marquez. After we make a motion. Councilmember Reed, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I move we adopt resolution 1623 and authorize the mayor to execute the memorandum of understanding on behalf of the city.
And do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councilmember Stewart. Now we'll have City Attorney.
There we go. Good evening. Before you tonight is a memorandum of understanding related to an ongoing and active litigation against the Big Three and Johnson & Johnson. So essentially anyone in the pharmaceutical manufacturing and supply chain. A settlement is expected very soon. That's a quote from one of the attorneys that's working the case. So I suspect that means sometime in 2022. There is an effort by that litigating firm to join all the Washington cities and counties as part of the class that would be eligible for a distribution of the settlement funds. And by signing on to this memorandum, Sumner would be rendered eligible for a very small but significant, depending on the settlement amount, portion of those funds. This MOU establishes a framework for distributing and sharing the proceeds, and it's split into 9 regions. Pierce County is its own region and is eligible for 12% of the total state settlement. Of that 12%, Sumner is slotted to receive 0.1%. The settlement funds can be used for a variety of things. And to again quote one of the attorneys that is litigating this matter, it is designed to give governments as much flexibility as possible to really help treat the symptoms of the opioid crisis, but also get out in front of the matter by changing prescription practices and helping with first response efforts to rid the community of opioids and its impacts. So the types of things that this money can be used for are treatment for drug disorders and co-occurring conditions. This would include our new community court program that we started this year. Prevention efforts to keep these drugs out of the hands of folks without a prescription and to implement more responsible prescribing methods. It can also be used to support first responders. So perhaps there's some type of partnership with police and fire that can be made here, particularly fentanyl being the primary focus of the first responders' efforts in the field. Training, leadership, planning, and coordination. So staff recommend signing on to this MOU. There is no guaranteed money now. A settlement has not been reached, but if and when it does get reached, it would be good for Sumner to be part of this class of cities and counties that would be eligible for the funds. And what's neat about this litigation is it's extremely complex and extremely expensive, but without it, cities like Sumner and small jurisdictions would never be entitled to any of this money. We simply don't have the resources to file lawsuits against the Big Three and Johnson & Johnson. So this is a really neat byproduct of a statewide effort, and staff recommend signing on to this MOU.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion among council members? Councilmember Newman, you have a little hand up. Is that not? Okay. Councilmember Stewart.
There we go. Thank you for presenting this. I read through this and it's excellent. And I was very pleased to see that part of the funds, under Part 3, other strategies could be used to fund current and future law enforcement expenditures. Very, very important. So a question along those lines. I'm imagining that the police department budgets for enforcement things now. Would this money, if we get it, when we get it, how would that be deposited? Where would it be kept track of? Is that a separate budget item? How does that work?
There are pretty strict reporting and tracking requirements. So yes, this money would need to be kept in a separate fund. It would need to be spent on only appropriate expenses. And then every year there's an annual report back to a regional committee. So every region, and there are 9, the state is split up into 9, every region will have a regional committee that will be in charge of oversight, distribution of the funds, but also making sure that it's spent appropriately. So yes, the answer is it would be kept in a separate fund, but there is a lot of flexibility as to what it can be spent on, particularly with law enforcement efforts.
Anybody else? Any members of the public would like to take their 3 minutes? All right, seeing none. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Hochstetter,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Potato,
yes,
Stewart,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Cole,
Yes.
Brown.
yes.
All right, unanimous. Okay. So we have an appointment for a hearing examiner, and that is also for City Attorney Marquez. Do I have a motion to approve appointing the hearing examiner? Councilmember Newman,
Sorry, I'll move that we approve a new hearing examiner.
do I have a second?
Yes, I'll second that.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Hochstetter. Okay,
Thank you, Mayor. So before you tonight is an exciting new appointment of a hearing examiner. This has not happened in many, many years because, as most of you will recall, Steve Casso, our former hearing examiner, served in that position for decades and recently retired at the end of 2021. So in response to his retirement, the city published a request for qualifications to solicit applications for a new hearing examiner. The city received 2 responses to that RFQ, and the evaluation committee determined that Steve Shelton would best suit the city's needs. Mr. Shelton has spent his career as a practicing attorney in mostly the area of land use. He was also, for a short stint, the municipal court judge for the city of Sumner. And he spent many, many years recently serving as a hearing examiner for a multitude of jurisdictions, both in Pierce and King County. So he is quite experienced. So Sumner's code allows the mayor or the city administrator to choose a hearing examiner, and then it requires confirmation by the city council. Our city administrator was involved in these conversations and does support the appointment of Steve Shelton tonight. So staff recommend council's support of Steve Shelton, appointed to a 2-year term as the city's new hearing examiner.
thank you. Any discussion from the council? Deputy Mayor Hochstetter.
Yes, Ms. Marquez, does Steve Shelton, will he be working for us alone or will he be working for other districts too?
I can't say with certainty. I know that most recently he was the deputy hearing examiner for Pierce County. So I'm fairly certain that he'll continue to do that. And he also works for the city of Ruston, I believe. So it's not uncommon for hearing examiners to cover lots of cities. In fact, there's only a handful of hearing examiners in the state, and they kind of share responsibilities among jurisdictions. So I'm guessing he'll stay on with Pierce County at a bare minimum.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? All right, seeing none. Michelle, want to call the roll?
Newman, Councilmember Newman,
Yes.
Councilmember Reed,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Potato,
Yes.
Cole,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Hochstetter,
Yes.
Okay, unanimous. All right. We're moving on to reports. Councilmember Botetto.
So on April 23rd, Sumner Rotary had a community service project where we picked up garbage off the shoulders of Highway 410, and it was quite enlightening, the types of things that are there. I noticed a number of people throw out their coffee cups, like the plastic cups, and then beer cans, and then a lot of say items that probably fly out of the back of a truck or something. So just, I think people need to be aware that they can take their things home and not just throw them out on the side of the road. And then I was quite impressed with the Lahar drill that happened on Friday, and went over by the Y and saw the, just part of it, but the schools, and then I know the police and fire spent a lot of time planning the whole drill. So it's good to see that that went off pretty smooth. And then on Saturday, I went to the Wise Healthy Kids Day that was open to the public, and they had a very good turnout. So we have a great community. I'm proud to be part of it.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Hochstetter.
Well, I would just like to thank the Rotary Club and the volunteers that did that cleanup, because there were citizens that were coming forward to me and complaining about how bad that looked. So that was a really well-chosen project for the Rotary Club, and I thank them very much for doing that.
All right. Councilmember Brown.
Yeah. Good job, Rotary. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Cole.
No report tonight.
Councilmember Newman.
Nothing this evening.
Councilmember Reed.
Well, I have a short one. So on April 21st, we had the Pierce County Regional Council meeting. I won't go over the entire agenda and what we covered, but two things that really rose to the top. One was Executive Dammeyer did a presentation regarding state of the county and the astonishing increase in crime statistics over the last year and a half. Kind of a call of crisis, so to speak, that things are so bad countywide right now with the crime statistics, and that is in multiple categories. The other was there were discussions on growth targets for Pierce County, and with our 2044 targets that get assigned through a combination of stages, including the Growth Management Act and Puget Sound Regional Council. And there were several cities that are, I don't, cautious or wanting to revise their growth targets that have been assigned to them. And several of those cities have written letters to the Pierce County Regional Council. And there was a lot of discussion and some back and forth. Some cities that are concerned with their growth targets, some cities that have been planning and are moving toward their assigned growth targets, are worried that if another city is reduced in what they're expected to meet, that reduction is going to then get distributed onto the other cities that have already been planning and moving towards those targets. So it was a lively discussion, quite a bit of back and forth, and it's not any one city or group. There's a number of cities on both sides of the discussion, so it was very productive. And then of course the regular business that went for the council. That's my update.
Thank you. Councilmember Stewart.
Nothing tonight. Thank you.
All right. City Administrator Jason Wilson.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Coming up at next week's study session, we're going to start off with a training session for all of our council members to provide some training on our updated council chamber technology. And then we're going to have a couple different presentations. The first one's going to be from the Community Food Bank, an annual report from their organization on what their challenges are and what they're seeing in our community. And then our lobbyist, Bill Clark, will be here to provide a legislative session recap and kind of a preview of what is to come in 2023. At our next regular council meeting on May 16th, just a couple items for your consideration. First will be a cemetery facility consultant design contract. And then you'll also be holding a public hearing regarding the proposed expansion of the multifamily tax exemption target area. This is something that council's discussed a few times over the last couple of months. And this is to expand the ability for the multifamily tax exemption into East Sumner neighborhood on a 12-year plan. The Planning Commission, they have a meeting this Thursday. They're going to be holding a public hearing on the proposed 2022 comprehensive plan amendments. In summary, there are 3 proposed amendments. The first would limit gas stations to the interchange commercial and industrial zones. The second is a sign code update to allow electronic reader board signs on city or library facilities on East Main Street. And the third is a language clarification related to densities to align with the existing code related to planned residential developments. After their public hearing, the Planning Commission will then begin discussing proposed changes related to accessory dwelling units as contemplated in our housing action plan. For the public listening, if you're interested in joining those public hearings or just to listen regarding the ADUs, the login information for the meeting, as well as all the proposals that are being considered, are available on our website. Councilmember Botetto mentioned the Lahar exercise. So last Friday, the city participated in a large-scale regional evacuation preparedness for a short notice Lahar. All of Sumner, Puyallup, and Ordinance schools in the Lahar zones evacuated safely. Overall, this was a huge success, and I want to extend a personal thank you not only to the City of Sumner staff, but the Sumner Bonnie Lake School District staff and City of Bonnie Lake staff that were here on the valley floor helping us make sure that we had a safe event for all of the children that were involved. I'm happy to answer any of council's questions.
Any questions? Councilmember Brown.
We've been requested to be in the chambers on Monday.
Yes, that is the mayor's desire. And I think it's important to have that everybody here to learn the new technology all at once.
Yeah, sink or swim. Hopefully, we will be swimming. Anybody else? All right, thank you. So this morning I had a great coffee at the Sumner Senior Center and got lots of questions from seniors that were present, and it's good to hear ideas, different ideas that people have. If you have ideas of your own, be sure to take the budget survey. It's on our website. It's a great chance for you to tell us what you like and what you don't like, and tell us how we're doing. So this Saturday is Sumner Shreds. It will be in our staff parking lot behind City Hall on Saturday, May 7th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. You're able to bring 3 bags of documents to shred. And also McLendon's will be taking batteries and light bulbs to recycle safely. Also mark your calendars for May 17th. This one is my favorite. It is the spring open house in person. I'm excited. We'll all be here at City Hall between 5 and 7 talking about park updates, downtown road projects, Sound Transit parking garage, and more. The idea is you can come once to hear about many different projects rather than having multiple open houses for each. It will also be offered online as well, but this is our first time to be able to see you in person, so I hope you'll stop in. That is May 17th at City Hall between 5 and 7. And that is the end of our meeting and adjourned.